I would like to welcome everyone to JD Center of Arts 242nd Meet the Artist program. JDC is envisioned as a unique art center that aims to preserve and exhibit its collection of folk, tribal, traditional, and contemporary art, all under one roof. It is currently under construction in Bhubaneswar, Odisha, opposite the 2nd century BC Khandagiri caves. Meet the Artist is an in-house program of JDCA where invited artists, craftspersons, creative professionals, or scholars, through the illustrated presentations, create an appreciation of all forms of visual art. Since 2001, 241 such Meet the Artists have taken place on the 2nd Saturday of every month. Currently, our sessions are being held online. We are delighted to have craft expert Jaya Jaitly on a Life Among India's Craftspeople for the 242 Meet the Artist program. It is our 5th online session, which till March this year was being held at the JD Center of Art, Bhubaneswar, uninterrupted for the last 19 years. Jayaji, we welcome you here. Thank you.
Namaskar.
Thank you very much. It's lovely being with you, even though it's all at this distant technological way. I hope the sound is working. Somebody wrote sound and put a question mark there. But I won't say too much now because it's a long presentation. And I hope everything I have to convey about my life and my love of craftspeople, which has given me actually a life of luxury. And when people say, what is luxury these days? It's not fancy BMWs or wristwatches. It's life among craftspeople and being able to work with them and share their lives. So I'll just go ahead now and leave it to you to show everybody what we prepared.
Thank you, Jayaji. So while I think everyone who's here knows about you, I would still like to introduce you. It is a privilege to have you here. Jaya Jaitly has worked closely with India's craftspersons to sustain traditional craft livelihoods and preserve India's cultural heritage. She has served on many advisory and policy-making bodies and worked for 3 decades in active politics and 4 decades in the craft. After guiding design and marketing at Gurjari for Gujarat Govt for 11 years, she founded the Dastkari Haat Samiti, a national association of craftspeople in 1986. Jayaji created Dilli Haat, a permanent and now iconic crafts marketplace in Delhi in 1994. Can you tell us, Jayaji, how you began your whole journey and how did you start the Dastkari Haat Samiti?
Well, the Dastkari Haat Samiti is an organization of craftspeople. They are the ones who sustain our office, and the work that I do along with the office is what sustains them. So we are kind of counter-inspiring each other. And the Samiti started because when I first began, of course, it was in Kashmir, much before Gurjari, and I used to see fantastic skills, but no opportunities to sell to the right customers or even come out of Kashmir. In the mid-60s, Kashmir was quite grim. So I started there with the consciousness growing that the craftspeople lived beautiful, lived in terrible places, but made beautiful things. So eventually that led to creating an organization where it would be their words that mattered, and we would have regular meetings and I would ask them what they wanted. So this meeting is being held after a big 2-week bazaar at Dilli Haat, where we share how much they sold, how much we spent during the year, and what programs we should make. So Dilli Haat is a result of that, of first starting in Hanuman Mandir, but realizing the need for Dilli Haat. And Dilli Haat is absolutely, it's really a wonder story, I think, because I don't know if I could ever do such a thing again. Motivating the government was at that time tough, but it was still better than what I would imagine it to be today. This land itself was got because it's not land. Where you see people standing in front, that's all an underwater drain runs underneath it. And this is the opening day of a Dilli Haat, the constructed Dilli Haat, where Delhi Tourism asked me to organize a bazaar so we could publicize to the craftspeople all across the country that we were going to have a bazaar here, which was permanent. So I kind of laid the first seed or plant when the whole plan was finally approved on paper and the sanctioned funds were given. And it was a wonderful effort between Delhi Tourism, state government, the NDMC, which covered the stormwater drain and gave us that piece of land, which was therefore very proudly created by ourselves. We didn't take anybody else's land, and no strong building, heavy building could come on top of it because it was hollow underneath. So it was perfect for our light structured activities and the small stalls that we wanted. Next. This is Dilli Haat in full action during one of our bazaars. We have one in the first 2 weeks of January, although this year we've postponed it till March because it's very cold, and with COVID, I don't think many craftspeople wanted to come. So we create the whole atmosphere of a mela, and you have musicians, chow dancers, the public also join in the dancing, and no matter whether it's cloudy, foggy or anything, it becomes a place that comes alive. And in fact, one of the parking lot attendants, I asked him, I said, how are people here when the weather's so bad? And he says, man behlane ke liye aate hain, which means that it makes people happy. And that's the purpose, to make craftspeople happy and to make the public happy.
Could I ask you, Jayaji, just one thing? Because, the whole Dilli Haat is such an iconic feature of Delhi now. And I remember as a child going to school and college and passing that really smelly drain and what you made it. But, this whole lovely association with Pradeep Sachdeva, the architect.
Yes.
And how did he envisage your thing? And also, sadly, he's no more. He recently passed away. Could you talk a little bit about it, even though we don't have possibly the images for it, but just what it was like about, how did he realize that dream of yours?
Well, he and Ramu Katakam were close friends. Ramu is not practicing anymore, but he writes books on architecture. And Ramu and Pradeep were in partnership. Somehow I met Ramu, and then he introduced me to Pradeep, and we both worked on the first idea and designs. I went to them saying, I want a marketplace that's always there. I don't want to have to construct something, put up tents, pay a contractor for short times. It's far too much expense going in the wrong hands. If we had a permanent place for impermanent people, that was my sort of motto at that time, it would mean one space would serve many throughout the year by rotation. So giving craftspeople 2 weeks at a time, which was about as long as they needed to sell the products they could make, because they don't have stores, they don't have storage, and there is a limit to how much they can make and put capital into for one sale. So they come for 2 weeks and then they're supposed to move away. So that way we could have, say, 150 every 2 weeks. So that's 300 craftspeople served in a month. And going throughout the year, that's hundreds of craftspeople who could be served throughout the year. And that was the purpose, that it would be the real heart, the heart where you come and go. You don't permanently have a shop. And it was supposed to be like a village heart. I've been to many hearts, both in Bengal and in Chhattisgarh, for instance, the tribal hearts. And there's always so much activity. There's socializing, there's food and drink and dance and cockfights, and everything is sold there. So a part of that, but only focused on craft, because otherwise there was only the emporia in those days. So somehow it came about, we planned it in a way that the structures would be very low-key, simple, because the crafts had to be what was vibrant. And I didn't think the architecture should overpower anything or try to show off. So that's how we did it. And we had to do it at two sides, the left and right, and leave the middle passage empty, because that was where the water was underneath. So the stalls are very light and on the edges. We have, and the whole idea was, one little interesting gimmick was, we ensured that the food stalls were right at the back, because otherwise, knowing the people of Delhi, they would have entered and eaten and gone away and not bothered to look at the crafts. So I said, let them work for their meal and walk through the craft stalls, see all of that, and then settle down to eat. And I think that worked. And also this 2-week rotation was a very, I thought, smart marketing move, because it meant you would come in the first 2 weeks and you would definitely buy what you saw that you liked. You won't say, okay, I'll think and come back later. It'll be there always. So you bought it right then. And then if you liked the place, you would come back in the next 2 weeks to see what's new now. So this was a little technique I had developed at Gurjari, and we tried it here. So many people, it was so heartening to hear, they would come and tell me, oh, we come here twice a month. So I knew that my gimmick had worked.
No, I think a lot of us, who either are from Delhi or not, Dilli Haat is something that we always visit. And I think what you said, and we go there for food, we go there to buy things, and we see amazing crafts from across the country. And that brings me to the next thing, which is that, when we look at your organization and we think about you, two amazing and iconic things that we always think about is the incredible craft maps. And the second is the amazing international artisan collaboration that have happened. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, if you go to the next picture, we may come to the artisan collaborations. Yeah, now I put this right after Dilli Haat because this is where these collaborations have always happened. It started in a very nice way in 2004. We had Asma Jehangir, who was a very famous voice in Pakistan for women's rights and human rights. So she'd come to visit India and she wanted to meet all party leaders. And since I was the general secretary of the Samata party at that time, she was wanting to visit me also to talk about the women and the human rights situation in Pakistan. But I didn't want to meet her in a party office. It was very drab and dull. And I tried to make my life as non-drab and dull as I can. So I asked her to meet us at Dilli Haat. And I said, we'll arrange a tea for you. And it's so much nicer sitting at Dilli Haat. So let's go there. So she came there and all our craftspeople greeted her. And she made her speech about how nice it was. And I just out of the blue spontaneously said, wouldn't it be lovely to have craftspeople from Pakistan come and sit here and work with our craftspeople? And there was tremendous applause from all our craftspeople. And that was what gave me the idea that let's try it. And I discovered the government has a scheme which nobody else avails of except me, to in fact pay for 5 or 10 craftspeople to come. So I did it with Pakistan. The unfortunate thing right then was that bus incident happened. Vajpayee took the bus, and after that Kargil happened. So I had to wait between 2001 and 2004 for all this stuff to be over. And then we did manage to invite 10 of them. So that started it. And the Vietnam government came to us during the Pakistan workshop and Dilli Haat Mela and said, can you help us to expose Vietnam crafts in India in the same way? So I said, sure, why not? So everything just happens just like that in my life. And I don't really plan anything at all. And just willy-nilly, I've been at it for 45 years now. So these are all the countries. Most recently, we had Bangladesh, before that Indonesia. And it's remarkable how friendly they become. They really hug and cry when they're leaving each other, even if they haven't understood each other's language. The language of craft is so beautifully shared. And they share openly, generously, and each one kind of adopts the other as a family member and promise to meet each other in their countries again. So for me, it's a matter of diplomacy also, that when big delegations go, or cricketers go, or media go, or parliamentarians go, it's very formal. But here we find that they create long-term links. And I remember when the Pakistan group came, he met a lady who remembered his father's shop in Lucknow. And he called up his village and introduced his father to the customer. So it was really wonderful to have these links, which they still continue. They call each other up and ask for raw material, or ask each other for advice, or just ask how they are. So this is something that we've made many friends across the world who then take the real message of India and friendship and goodwill and culture, and they get to see how we like to nurture our crafts by creating a place like Dilli Haat. So it has many things that come out of it which give us a lot of joy.
Jerry, I mean, I've attended a few of these workshops, and what you say, I've actually seen it and witnessed it. And I think a lot of us, have been so fortunate. And I think, I think things are better in life. It'll be fantastic to see what you want to do with the next, edition of this. But also the craft maps. I remember that, so many of us collected all those beautiful craft maps that you created. And could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, you could go on to the next one, the next slide. Now, we started, of course, with India, but not with this India. I had been to Bangkok, and there's a Mary Chandler's Markets of Bangkok map. And that was in its 36th edition, and every tourist bought it. It was Mary Chandler is a watercolor artist, contemporary, who kind of painted her feel of what was Bangkok all about. And she listed there the locations of markets for buying puppies and electronics and handbags and all kinds of things. So I saw that map, and the artistic quality of it interested me. And I thought, my gosh, in India, we have so many crafts. I should do maps like this on craft. So I started with India. But when we moved to doing so many other states, and with the India one, it was just no space to put everything. We remade the India maps, and I thought when the other crafts maps for each state were done by traditional artists from the state, when you look at India, there's no such thing as Indian art and one art representing it. We have so many, as I discovered while making these art forms, and there's so many more. So I decided that we'll use a contemporary artist, because as old as India is and as traditional, we are also in many ways very contemporary. So I got Arpana Kaur as a woman, because naturally I would favor a woman, to do these contemporary ideas with ancient visualizations, because the weaver is showing generations of weavers, how they weave the white muslin, which is so fine that it's disappearing into water, which could mean also that handlooms are disappearing. And the other one is pots of all kinds, metal pots, iron pots, terracotta pots, and the woman being the basic nurturer of life, how water is needed for life. And so the water flowing and the muslin going into water kind of connect. So we did a lot of thinking for this, and Arpana did this beautiful work. So that's how the India maps came, where we give a gist. This was Delhi, commissioned by the Delhi government for the Commonwealth Games that happened here. One side I had to put in Dilli Haat, of course, and on the other side you'll see a contemporary and ancient depiction of Delhi. You'll see Red Fort, and you'll see Chandni Chowk, and you'll see the metro and flyovers, everything. So Delhi has a lot of craft in Old Delhi and in the extreme little villages of South Delhi. So this was the map we did for Delhi tourism during that time. This was our Andhra map, which was done on cloth, and the artist Niranjan, who is very, very well known now, he was not well known then, his father was. He insisted that he wash the dyes back in his village and not here in the dirty Jamna. So he first drew it, and all these maps were, many maps were designed by Sunita Kanvinde, architect Kanvinde's daughter and a dear friend, and also some by Shubroto Bhaumik in Ahmedabad. So we would either work from Ahmedabad or here, and the artists would be called to us for about 2 weeks at a time, and we would create the design along with the artist, and it would be done and completed before the artist left. And then that would be digitized and put on a computer. During this whole time, it would take about 2 or 3 months to collect the text, which meant persons traveling to the state and going to first and secondary sources and finding out details of where things were made. So the idea was to make it just a simple tourist map, or for students to not have to pay 3,000 or 4,000 for a coffee table book, but just spend 150 rupees and fold up a map in their bag, knapsack, and go off to travel and discover crafts. So each one is an interpretation. This one, usually the tree of life does not have weavers and stuff at the bottom, but we would always make sure in every map we put crafts as the human element in it.
Yeah.
Next. This was Bihar, uh, done by Neelkant Chaudhary. He lives in Gurgaon. He's from Bihar and he's a Madhubani painter, but he's contemporized. He lives a contemporary life, if you want to call it that. So he's done a little bit of his own thought put into it, and it's fun because we wanted it to be uh, kind of earthy, like Bihar always is. The soil is very rich. So we actually, in the map on the right, where there are many people, the color of the background didn't come out right with normal bought paint. So we rubbed local mud on it to give it that kind of muddy color. And and then we use these fluorescents to pop out from in front of the mud. These figures have been used and reused by the World Bank in their calendar program and everywhere else, because somehow they've turned out to be very representative of something whimsical and contemporary and yet traditional about Indian art. This was Sundari Bhai from Chhattisgarh. This was done under Shubhrato Bhaumik in my supervision in Ahmedabad. We called her there, and very quiet and very shy lady, not so shy and quiet anymore. But in those days, when I asked her, would she sign her name and do a self-portrait, she was very shy and hesitant about it, but finally agreed. So the left side corner, the bottom, you will see she's done a self-portrait. And in the other side of the map, which we haven't shown here, she's shown Lord Krishna playing the flute on a tree, and you can see he's wearing a wristwatch on his wrist. And this is her home in Chhattisgarh, which we covered, and her life was shown in our Google project. So these are little aspects of where we've shown the map and the maker. Goa. This artist was not really an artist. He's an architect called Jimmy Devasia. I felt that because we had got an architectural feel to the design that we wanted, might as well have an architect paint it. So, and Leela Hotels had sponsored this. So right at the bottom left of the maps, the Leela Hotel wanted themselves shown, and I didn't want photographs. So we painted their hotels, and then we took that idea right up to show the different kinds of buildings that Goa has, churches and temples and mosques and balconies and windows. And then we made the whole theme about the shell windows and the decorative windows of Goa. So in fact, I'm now working on a project to try and revive them, the shell windows, not using shell, but maybe using some acrylic substance. So I hope 1 or 2 years later, my dream of recreating those windows of Goa, even as part of an art exhibition on the wall, I think they would look fantastic, because even here they make miniature tiles now and fiberglass windows just as souvenirs for Goa, and I think they could be redone. So project ahead. Himachal. In Himachal, this is a Chamba Rumal, that's the embroidery style. And the smaller map which is shown here is done by Vijay Sharma, who's a very famous Kangra artist who lives there. And what we like, this is the typical Chamba Rumal, which is about more or less feudal and noblemen's lives and noble women's activities. But in the contemporary ones that are happening now, it's very interesting to see how they use black cloth, where they used cream colored natural cloth earlier. And this is how then raindrops can be shown in the monsoon coming. So Kangra is very miniature style, but entirely in embroidery, where the embroidery at the back is the same as the front. And then these are some of the Himachali nomads who live there, the shepherds. So the different styles which are being created today. So I've compiled these pictures to show you all that ancient things can be made modern. When we did the painting with Vijay Sharma, we asked him to show a woman embroidering this the reverse side of the map, the Chamba Rumal. So we kind of combined it and made it our very own thing. So all these illustrations and images are not at all digital. Everything has been created by us. Kashmir map. This is what is interesting about this, is apart from the map, of course, the other side of the map, which we haven't shown here, is a replication of the map of Srinagar embroidered on an old shawl, which is in the museum in Srinagar. But we've not shown that side. We've shown this because it connects with this lamp. Now, this is very contemporary. It's been designed and executed by us along with Lotus Studio, Ambrish Arora, who's very well known for using craft in his works. And he's done the Krushi Bhavan in Bhubaneswar, so you would be familiar with that. So he asked us to recently do the interiors with craft for a major project they had with a corporate legal office in Gurgaon. So the insides of these lights, which will be overhanging, are Kashmiri artwork. So there are 4 different lights in 4 different shades of blue. And these are poppies, there's lotus, there's all kinds of things in the inside and the others. So this is how we also sit with the craftspeople and guide them, make him plan to do something in a circular form, which they don't normally do. So we work very simply in the office in this manner. The Jharkhand map needed a trip to Hazaribagh, where the tribals live in and around the area. And Sunita Kanbinde, in fact, went and supervised the painting of this map. And it's done with paint and then running the comb over it, so you get this textured effect. So the Jharkhand map is again a fantastic, I would think this was contemporary whimsy and not ancient tribal art at all. So it was interesting, these maps, because one side showed where the crafts were, the other side showed the textile, and the entire backdrop of the text was the local art form, the state art form. So we presented 3 things in one from the artistic cultural world of India. This kind of style is actually mural painting, which was done about 500-600 years ago on stone walls of temples. And they revived that through a Gurukul outside Guruvayur in Kerala. And there are many now people have alumni from that. So this one is Ramchandran, who did very well in this style. And here you have beautiful depictions of the sea, which is almost Japanese or South Asian. The shape of the state of Kerala is done in coconut trees. And you will see very gently elephant forms also filling in spaces. So again, typical of Kerala, an ancient art revived and done in the colors that those art forms are practiced. Gond art, Madhya Pradesh, we did a map and then it had to be divided because Madhya Pradesh got divided into Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh. So we had to redo the Madhya Pradesh map. This one, you will see how our maps evolve. This design we've used in the interior of a shop. And as also many people have seen it in the shop and ordered the artists to come and work in their homes and create murals. So the whole idea has been a very interesting outcome of work, of livelihoods, of awareness of the art form, and awareness by the craftsperson that they can involve their art in things like maps, which they would never have thought of. So this art form is also being used by us in projects where the dentist clinic has been decorated with art like this on the walls, just to make taking your tooth out to be a little more pleasant. Next. Northeast was a bit of a tough one to think about because all these 7 states had to be put together. There was no art form for each state as such. And interestingly enough, because of my parallel political life, we had many democracy-seeking refugees from Burma staying in the house of George Fernandez, where I did a lot of my work. So there was this artist called Sit Nien Ai who lived there, and he preferred to make his room in the bathroom, and he made his bathtub into his bed. So he was a crazy artist like that. He had plenty of other space offered to him, but he liked that. And he painted from there. And because he was so close, being a Burmese citizen, so close to the culture of our Northeast, he could very easily depict the designs of the weaves and the kind of people who worked there and came to markets, because they all wore lungi, sarong type of clothes and so on. And the tribes were very often common. So we collected all these strips of designs which are on Naga shawls, Manipuri shawls. Every state shawls depict, the design depicts the particular village or the identity of the tribe. So that's why we chose so many, and we made them into strips, and we made the 7 states into collage of the weaves of that state. And in this case, the craft side was bamboo weaves of that state. So it came out quite interestingly, because their weaves were very definitive and different, and so were the bamboo weaves. And we've shown some images from the different bamboo and from the weaving. And the Naga map, I think, turned out quite interesting and dramatic in our way of having to put together the forms of 7 different states, all knit together by a Burmese artist.
Wow. Jayaji, can you tell us a little bit about your other kind of craft projects where it's been about linking communities to markets? And, you know, there are so many case studies that you've done, which we often don't get to know about. Could you talk a little about that?
Okay, does the next picture show something of it? Then I can get to something. Okay, no, we're still on the maps, but we'll quickly go through. All right.
Oh, sorry.
This is a very interesting story, because in Aruvakod in Kerala, I read about the village women being turned to go take to prostitution. And that troubled me a lot, because I belong to Kerala for one, but it wasn't parochial. I would have done it anywhere. And also it was very sad, because they were potters. And this was a huge story that came in the India Today at that time, really naming them, pointing them out. Oh, they bought gold bangles, they did this, they did that with their prostitution, but they're saying the children are turned back from school. And it was a terrible story. This was how they lived. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I managed to go to the village, because my male trade union workers and party workers, who were all not prepared to go and be seen in a village known for prostitution. So I led the way, and they followed, and they came along. So we held 2 or 3 meetings in the village, and I asked them whether they would like to take up a kind of modernization, upgrading effect of their pottery. Because local people had tried to help them, but they gave them bookbinding to do, or gave them a cow, but they were not used to that kind of thing. So we thought best to keep it at what they know, and what is their skill, and what is their whole life all about, and their culture. So we did a whole lot of things to remove the liquor shop, to light up the road that led to the village. And then many of the women, we trained them with 2 designers to make 75 new marketable products. So instead of doing the flower pots they used to do earlier, or the vessels to cook fish, which people had stopped using because they use steel and aluminum now, they didn't have a market. And that's how the local police post, policemen would drag them into their tents and make them into prostitutes. So this was to get away from that. So we can go to the next one. Some of these the things we started making with them. Next. This is when we had our map exhibition at Kalakshetra in Chennai. We took many of their products as part of the Kerala props, the art installations we put around the maps, because each map was shown with some of the crafts of that state. So the Aruvakod village work was given a prominence. And now this is the kind of beautiful work they do. They do murals which are ordered by corporate offices and people in Dubai and all that. And they make them and fit into tiles and take them and fit them there. So this has been, many of them stopped pottery and went on to other jobs, but more respectable jobs. One thing, so therefore it was a two-prong. It was upgrading their skill, arranging different markets, and taking them away from prostitution. Because all my craft actually is based in some way, lifting society out of poverty or problems. So there is no craft I've just done for the sake of design. Here, the Badohi Basket project came because I was sent to Badohi by the National Commission of Women to see what was the condition of women carpet weavers. So I had 2 or 3 huge meetings in the village, after which they, so this was on the top left is the meeting about carpets, where I asked them what were their problems. 35% of these women were women-headed households who earned around 700 or 800 rupees a month. So it was a pathetic existence in weaving carpets. And they came to me after that and gave me a lot of petitions. The government was there. And interestingly enough, nothing happened about the carpets as such. They did perhaps get upgraded a bit in their lives, but they presented me with 2 beautiful little baskets they had woven as I was leaving. Can we turn to the next one? This was, of course, how I visited all their huts, watched them weaving carpets. This is how they had to sit huddled up, almost dark rooms, because they said that if they put light, the upper castes would come and cut away the electric wires. And if they put bigger windows, then thieves would come in and rob their raw material. So they were really in a miserable condition. And I actually went and visited all of them in their huts. Next. So the next part of that was them giving me their beautiful baskets. And I arranged a project there where this simple grass, sarpat grass, is obtained from edges of water bodies after the monsoon. It just grows wild. So they collect all that, they dye it. And this was our project where the men would come bringing their wives on their cycles or their grandmothers or their mothers. And they would enjoy a little ice cream as a break halfway through. And we organized these design workshops for upgrading the baskets. Next. So these are some of their beautiful baskets. This on the left is what they did originally, which was very skilled and very nice. And then we did off takes on that, wine bottle holders and other things. And this, again, we sent these out to corporates to give their Diwali gifts in it and so on. And these are now marketed. Every bazaar that you'll see done by Dastkari or Dastkari Haat Samiti, they will come with their baskets and new innovations every time. Next. So this is the bazaars that we hold, about 3 or 4 a year, serving about 400 people over that time period. This is abroad also. Sri Lanka we were invited, Addis in Ethiopia, and China, which is an interesting story. This boy, a Madhubani artist, he drew in Chinese customers and did a sale of ₹1.5 lakh in just 2 days because he was so chatty and drew everybody in, made them learn how to do Madhubani painting. And then when I asked him to do some work in India at a workshop, he had photographed all the things in China and he actually is looking at his mobile phone and he's writing here in Chinese to show his China experience. So that's how innovative they can be if they get an opportunity. And it gives me so much joy to see this. I mean, you can maybe wonder why I've worked at this for so long, but every single thing gives me so much joy. Every time they learn and there's a spark of new creativity in them and they come and say, "Hamara sale acha hua, I now can buy a cow or build another work shed, or I can educate my daughter for the year," then it's a whole lot of things happening at once. Creating beauty, making people happy and making their lives better. So I don't think this sector can give any less joy, and it does more than other sectors, I believe. This was a little attempt off and on, which we did in setting up a shop in Delhi, which was purely non-profit, but we've had to close it, unfortunately, because of COVID and difficult for customers to come. But this was another little experiment we did in running a shop. Next. I count this as one of my most interesting projects. We wanted to improve the shabby cycles of Banaras. The cycle rickshaws are very uncomfortable. The rickshaw walas are very poor, and it just doesn't make Banaras look nice at all. It makes the whole road very shabby, crowded, and yet 80% of the lanes are only for rickshaws. So we got the artists of the wooden toy makers of Varanasi, who also can't earn 300 rupees a day. They're finding it difficult. So we upgraded the cycle, put new chains to give it a double gear thing. We made a box at the back in some to put luggage. And then we got the artists to paint them in the motifs of their traditional art forms. So we just made a little makeshift place on the banks of the Jamuna behind a little lane. And we have 8 beautiful new cycles like that. And I'm waiting for some corporate to come. It only takes 11 lakhs to do 100 more. So I'm waiting for somebody to come forward and just beautify Varanasi by beautifying the lives of these artists and rickshawalas. Next.
Jayanti, this is your Akshara project.
Yes.
That one has heard a lot about. Could you talk a bit about this? And I think it's also traveled across the country and the world.
Yes.
In parts.
It started with just a little spark of irritation because the karigars would come to me and say, "Hum anpad hai, hum gareeb hai. I'm poor and I'm uneducated," as if they had nothing in this world that could make them useful or happy. So I said, that's not true. You know a lot. You know everything about your own culture. What you can do on your loom or with your paintbrush or with your tools, people can't do sitting on a computer. Nothing is that great. So learn to love your own language. So I'm a great languages, regional scripts. Oriya script is beautiful. And I just felt that our scripts themselves are beautiful as design motifs. You don't have to know how to read that language. But all of them at least know their own language, and we shouldn't let it die because they don't know English. And they felt that a lack. They do know now English, but it's not as if they're nothing without knowing English. So we held a workshop where we taught them calligraphy. Now this is a wood carver, that is a block printer, that's his son. All the artists here are not writers or artists of calligraphy. They are all craftspeople. So the interesting thing was they all learned in a week what calligraphy is all about and how they can use their script as design. So next. And this is what came of it. The Ajrak printer discovered that he could do these stencils and then block print into them phrases that they use to greet each other in Sindhi, which is the language they speak in Kutch. Next. This is Gurmukhi, block printing in Gurmukhi, where Vidya Balan wore this somewhere and created a lot of sales. Bengal, Tagore's paintings. This has a fascinating story, I must tell you, because all my crafts and all my craftspeople have lovely stories. The one on the left is a shawl made by somebody who used to quite happily say he was the best embroiderer, but he didn't know how to read or write, and he was quite proud about that. So I again told him, I won't speak to you if you say you're proud of not knowing how to read and write. You go and learn, and you embroider the name of each booty into part of the design. So he took his children's class storybooks and learned how to read and write. And then he embroidered 125 different motifs with the name in Kashmiri embroidered around it. Here was another Kashmiri effort, a story, where the stone pelting was going on the earlier phase, and it was very sad and horrible. So I told the papier-mâché artists, I said, you pick up the stones that you find in the little rivers and streams here. They're smooth and round and lovely. Paint them, write a little message of peace at the back in Urdu, and we will say that make a livelihood out of selling these beautiful things rather than harming somebody by throwing stones. That story made its round, and because we had given 5 or 6 stones to Omar Abdullah as a gift, he'd inaugurated a craft bazaar of ours, and that came in the newspapers. So this is our Akshara project design, which he has done, where he rewrote, reproduced the newspaper story about him as it was about these stones. He made a platter with and the stones on them. So this has so much meanings, and this is where I want to point out that, you know, everybody who joins politics isn't a bad person or always doing negative things. Politics can help you to create an interesting thought, which can be creatively used to give a good message. That's what I'm trying to say. The kavod is recently discovered, just about 5 or 7 years ago. This was always a tradition in Rajasthan, where the landlords or noblemen would give stories to artists to write. And it's like a little mini cupboard which opens out into flaps, phrases of the story. Or they would do the Ramayana or Mahabharata or religious epics on them, and they would recite them as they open the flap to tell a story. So it's like a temple come storytelling device. So we expanded this into making it a cabinet of art, an artistic cabinet, which is all the decor you would need in a room, which is a, you know, a painting and a cupboard all in one. So this can be used properly for storage. Alongside with, these are some of the Akshara products. We made 150 after our trial and our class and everything. This is Tamil, the word for letter for U. And U has created earrings like this. So it's just showing them and getting them to realize how beautiful their language is and how it can be made into a design motif. Hanuman Chalisa, he after this painting done on silk, with all the story written in Devanagari, he got orders for about 9 lakhs of just reproducing this piece. So Akshara again was appreciate literacy, appreciate your own regional language, learn the beauty of it, bring out your own culture, and also make money. This is a beautiful piece. The Niranjan whose map you saw, this was his calligraphy piece. I went to Kalahasti and I told him to open his computer. We Google searched what calligraphy was all about. So I gave him a little lesson in calligraphy overnight. And then he did this most resplendent tree of life, in which if you expand it, each stem, each stalk, each bird, each thing is all in Telugu alphabet with phrases saying the bride is looking beautiful, something is as bright as a marigold. Lovely phrases in Telugu, all hidden into the design. This piece was sold to the Museum of Sacred Art, which is just outside Brussels in Belgium. Our first exhibition was quite fascinating at Habitat in New Delhi. These big letters, just as a matter of side interest, are made out of paper drinking straws with light shining through them. So these are all thousands of straws put together, fitted into these shapes. This was in Cairo, bits of Akshara wherever the place could fit. This was in Paris at the UNESCO headquarters, which is very keen on the preservation of languages and mother tongues. So they welcomed us for a week. And this was Boutros Ghali, who used to be the Secretary General of the UN. He was the main visitor on one day. He unfortunately died sometime after that, but he was a very keen visitor. And here I'm taking, this is our Odisha Patachitra. You would be happy to hear.
Yeah.
Apinder Soin lives in Raghurajpur, and he did this lovely story of a parrot getting enlightened because he's taught to read and write. And who is he taught by? The horoscope reader who makes the parrot pick out somebody's horoscope. This was in Mumbai at the Prince of Wales Museum, Shivaji Maharaj Vastu Sangralaya, where we hung banners outside, just random alphabets in each language, Indian language, scripts. This was for in Pune, where there was this huge international conference of writers who are under this very prominent organization called PEN, P-E-N, capital. So there are lots of intellectual writers who are part of that membership. And they asked us, because they were writers, they wanted us to show Akshara there. So with the invitation by Dr. Ganesh Devi, who's also worked a lot on Indian languages, he called us. This was in Singapore at the Indian Heritage Center. Akshara went for a whole year. They took this idea from us, symbols and scripts, and they collected some textiles and other calligraphed works from South Asia as well. The Prime Minister went there on the last week of it, and otherwise we sent craftspeople for 2 weeks at a time to demonstrate and hold workshops in Singapore. We do also go into teaching because the main thing is the young people don't know enough about crafts. So next. This is at schools. Sri Ram School invites us quite often. They have a heritage day and they have a whale of a time learning pottery and kite making and various other things. So we do offer craft classes. And at Ashoka University, they have a co-curricular which they're expected to take very seriously. So I took 12 classes there, 2 hours at a time. And for one of the hours, I would take a craftsperson who would teach them. So here are students who think they're wonderful, but they would really perspire trying to make a kite or to print a cloth. And they were very excited when they printed a square piece of cloth for themselves. And they came to respect the artisan a lot after that 1 year's interaction. They would call them sir and G and master. And it gave a lot of pride to the artisan as well, who was a teacher, felt like he was a teacher at the university. Yeah. And many of them are not fully educated. So it's a nice growth kind of spurt that happens in things like this.
I think one of the biggest issues is that how we sometimes don't have the kind of respect that artisans deserve. Yeah. And I think that kind of storytelling and those narratives, I think, came out best in the big initiative you did with the Google Art and Culture.
Yes.
Could you talk a little about that?
Yeah, well, as you can see here, we did all these many stories, 52. Google asked us to do 25. Then they were so excited, they added on more and more, and it became 52. So we are just showing you little windows of some of the stories, but I'll tell you later how you can look at it better. So these are different states. We had 4 sections to each, what they call an exhibit, a story. It would be the community, the location and the community, which would show its culture and everything. And then you would have process, product, and its use, which was either marketed or used wherever they were. So it was a whole gamut of things. So this is how many of the crafts from either Manipur or Ponduru in Andhra Pradesh. Next, you can just keep going because these are all the states we covered and the crafts we covered. And now we're struggling through COVID to do 10 more. Now this, just hang on to this page for a minute because I would suggest all of you who are watching to download a free app on your phone, G.co/crafted in India, lower caps, all one word. In a minute, you will get your Google Arts and Culture app on your phone and you can just click on anything. And it's so fascinating because all our hard work in research and photography and text writing and metadata and captioning and everything else that we did comes alive through modern technology that Google has added to it. So you can click on this on a particular button and you will find all the pictures that have a shade of this blue in it. Or you can click if you want to see what can I buy for my home. And you click and it'll show you all the kind of things you can buy for your home. Where can I see architecture? Then you'll show all the pictures with architecture. So it's very interestingly sorted and it's something you can spend hours doing. I read every word, saw every picture, selected everything, put everything, planned everything, but I still haven't been able to go through all the 52 stories after they're done and launched, but it's got a huge, wide viewership. We've had the Natural History Museum of New York ask us for pictures. The Museum of Art and Photography in Bangalore is going to add stories from this onto their classes. And it's kind of like traveling all kinds of different directions, but it's very, very fascinating. And I'm very proud of bringing crafts from the old days of helping them 40 years ago to bringing it onto a huge online platform and linking them with today's technology, which most times people like us, I can't even work much of the computer, but the fact is that I can still bring a world to shake hands with the technological world and make it work.
Yeah. I think this whole link of I think there's always a fear that a lot of people have that, technology will somehow take away a lot of things from craft. And I think this project of yours has really shown that actually it can be used as a tool to disseminate. And I think the other project that you did, which is on Gandhiji, that also shows, because I think Gandhiji was someone who embraced technology, but what it meant for self-sustenance. If you could talk a little about that.
Yes, well, Gandhi, as I've shown now already, you probably guessed I love calligraphy. So first of all, a Google story made me discover many areas of handmade paper. One of the stories is about handmade paper made of rhino poo, elephant poo, plant in the mountain areas of Sikkim, all kinds of things. So I love paper, and I'm sure Jatin will agree with me on this. Paper, brushes, and pens are just luxurious things. So I decided that why not distribute among 11 calligraphers, well-known calligraphers in India, who are willing to do calligraphy in their own mother tongue, depicting something about Gandhi, because Gandhi was the one who promoted the revival and the use and the value of handmade paper. So this was a tribute to Gandhi on paper with calligraphy. So you can move on. These are some of the various contributions. We got about 60. Each one was given 10 sheets of paper and asked to do 5 works. So these are some of the exhibits, all in different languages. And now imagining Gandhi through craft was in the 150th year. I felt that Gandhi promoted craftspeople. What do craftspeople think about Gandhi? And I wonder how much they have absorbed of his thinking, his ideology, his life in today's day. But I decided I'm not going to guide them too much. Let me discover. So I called about 40 craftspeople. And I said, please do something connected with Gandhi in whatever way you want. Apni kala mein Gandhi banao. So this was some of the lovely stuff. Gond. It's so fascinating if you see closely. It's Gandhi's spectacles. It just kind of pops out of proportion over there, which is so whimsical and lovely. This is in glass made by a very poor artisan in Firozabad in UP. A wall plaque by a struggling young artist. This is zari cotton, gold zari on fine cotton weave with the Gandhi bhajan in his body. Brass, dokra, terracotta painted tiles. Next. This is an amazing thing from Odisha. You should be proud of this because this is paddy craft. It's just bits of paddy and thread woven into, this is, I don't know what, 40 meters of garland. And the garland is then twirled and twirled and twirled and twirled around, and it's made a 4-foot high figure of Gandhi. And imagine a very poor artisan, he brought this all the way as his contribution. And I didn't have to tell him anything. Each of them has done this on their own, a weave in bamboo. This man normally makes furniture. He is one of the ones who learned that he could be an artist in wire craft after sitting with the Israeli during one of our workshops at Dilli Haat. Kashmiri embroidery. This is this artisan from Kotpad. He lives there actually. In Kotpad, I took him to Bangalore, him and his wife, because I'm so proud of him. And he sat with all the students of NIFT to teach them how he does this work. And they just make strips like this of making garlands out of paddy with thread, paddy husk.
Yeah.
Next. So that's just some of the Gandhi. If you go to our website and all, you'll see that we've got a whole catalog on all the things that were done. Then there was this whole controversy about handloom versus powerloom and the reservations, whether there should be reservations or not. So I went to see what was the reality. Instead of just shouting at government from Delhi, it's best to know what's the real situation from the weavers. So this is Chanderi, where actually there is no power loom at all. So I went from one end of things to the other, and Chanderi is beautiful. Then Bhagalpur, which is a mix. The government gets cocoon and the thread from Madhya Pradesh, but most of the time the Jharkhand government gives it to power loom workers, and handloom workers have to uh, scramble for that same cocoon. But these are all the ones that do not use power loom at all. So it's a mix in Bhagalpur. In Purulia and West Bengal, it's interesting. All the power loom comes in from Bangladesh. Otherwise, in West Bengal, most of it is handloom. And of course, some handloom weavers have power looms in their homes as well, because as they say, one power loom sari, I will get 12 power loom saris in a day, whereas with handloom, I need 5 or 6 people to work on a sari for 2 days, one sari. So, of course, it is not that viable for him, but he still keeps both traditions under his roof. I'm fascinated with the gamcha because that's the true Indian cloth for the labor class, the working class. And we all think about fashion and handloom and craft for the well-to-do people and the urban middle class. But what really sustains these women are the laborer, the rickshawala, the redawala, the vegetable man, all using gamchas. So we also tried to make it a little fashionable so that the urbans can also be part of it. So these are little fashion shoots, which are a joke actually. But otherwise, we made beautiful saris and we did sell the gamchas ordinarily. So this is also taken off very well as a gamcha project, which we did with very little funds and a lot of success.
Jayaji, there are a lot of project documents that have come about. And I think some of these, which I hear, which you've published, but also a lot of publications that you worked on. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yes, well, I think for some of us of the older generation, research, documenting, writing down, recording is very important. Today, you have, to constrict your sentences to so many letters, and there are things that vanish, and some long, nice document can be deleted with one click. And I don't quite appreciate that. I think we are forgetting our history. We are forgetting to really learn by going to written works. And whether it's in the media or anywhere else, people are wanting quick fixes, quick knowledge. But at least of the experiences we've had and the work we've done, I felt it's very, very important for us to share what we've done. Because each one has a story, each one has a possibility, each one has a discovery, which somebody else shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. So these are the documents we did one. I believe that airports should be decorated inside with a lot of Indian culture and something where it's fun and it's contemporary and yet it's traditional. So we did the whole project funded by Tata. It's a very small project of conducting 3 workshops where we created a whole lot of artworks and things that could go inside an airport. Other was we'd taken things to London. There were those on the previous screen that you saw. There were all the documents of the international workshops we've held. So it shows like this is the Bangladesh, Pakistan, Tibetan women from Pakistan who came separately for embroidery. This was Africa. Then this was Sri Lanka. Like this, there's Egypt, Thailand, Indonesia. Anyway, all of the another one, South Africa alone. So all these, Iran here, there's Iran, there's Israel. All of these have something to teach. Then we have Gandhi. We have the Akshara workshop, what they learned. and the other Gandhi project with the calligraphy. So like that, we have shared openly everything we've done. Who was there? What was the process? What was the outcome? So it makes it more transparent, especially if we're using public funds. So we feel that this is important, and a lot of students come and buy these documents and booklets whenever we have our bazaars. Next. These are my books, which again to share. I come from a family of writers and I enjoy writing. So it's easy for me, but I feel it's very important to share knowledge. And maybe these, after some years, will grow out of date. I'm happy to see now there's a lot of contemporizing, a lot of young people coming into craft. When we were the old, the stalwarts, whom you look at us as all old and expert and so on, we really struggled without much at all, and going into non-air conditioned places and struggling through forests and deserts to reach places. But today people are managing much easier, and so the young people who like comfort are going. And I'm glad about that, because they're also got very techy and enterprising in business, which we all weren't. So I think we did a lot of groundwork to help them survive, to revive, and to record that these are the people who exist. So maybe this is like a base for the young people of today and tomorrow to refer to and understand where our craftspeople come from and what their cultures are all about.
There's that book, Jayaji, that I worked on with you, Crafting Nature.
Yes, yes.
I remember.
That's right.
And then
Good.
you do a lot of children books also. Right?
Well, I think it's necessary to put into children's minds the existence of craft children. So various projects have brought these out. These four were done for Penguin, and then they were bought over by Pratham, who then translated them into 9 Indian languages for schools. And these are my recent ones. They're not published, they're digital. I'm still waiting for a publisher, but COVID came along. So these three are about technology and the craftsperson. What happens when they meet? How do they overcome the problem?
And then COVID itself, I mean, this has been such a crazy year, and I think so many of us have tried to work in our own way. And you've done a lot of work on that front also. Could you talk a bit about that?
One had to. These are all respected artists. This boy on the right is my China one, who did so well in China and is very bouncy and innovative. So we got all of them, all in their different art forms. We sent out a message saying, make masks. If you can't get them stitched locally, we'll stitch and send, work on them. Or we used our gamcha, or embroidery, or shibori, batik, block printing. And it just needs a bit of cloth. So a lot of them could use their cut piece and chota leftovers and everything else. And we got a whole range of masks. You can turn the page. And well, now we did, just to share a little figure with you, within from May till now, we've done about 7 lakhs worth of mask marketing for the crafts, for a small product.
Yeah.
And then we encouraged artworks. We haven't added to this presentation the latest PDF we've made, which is a 100-page art gallery of all the art forms that have come out by our craftspeople post-COVID. Many of the stories are about COVID, where they're teaching social reform, lessons, healthcare, and it's very nice what they're doing to it. And they're bringing their, moving away from Rama and Mahabharata to the latest battle, the epic battle that we all seem to be fighting.
Yeah.
And the way that, if they're given an opportunity, they translate. We should never think of keeping them in some other era. Just because they're traditional.
Hello. Thank you, Jayaji. That was a fabulous presentation where you took us through your entire span of crafts and what you've done. And I hope, I know that you've any questions that anyone has that you would like to ask.
No, it's wonderful seeing you, Jaya, after such a long time. And this electronic device is very good, bring us closer. But your contribution to the craft there are very few left. And you are one of the pioneer in this. And I remember Pupul Jaikar, Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay, and many others who pioneered their interest and research in craft. But your work is a wide range, which is very good. And I personally feel this should go to the school level. It has to be introduced, which you are doing, which is wonderful. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. Actually, I feel during Devi's time, she was one big name. There were some names with her. Then one big name. Then some of us have a few more names. Maybe not all equally big, but equal. And now the younger generation after us are many, and I'm happy with that. And more brand name and business. I'm not very sure about how good that is, but maybe we are earning as professionals and helping craftspeople to earn. So I think that's a whole new trend of young people coming in bigger numbers than when we were working.
Someone's trying that. They're just trying to do that.
Jaya, it's Pin. I know you as June. It's been a long time. And I was so excited to hear about this. You've been the craft person from the day I first saw you at Handloom House with your beautiful long braid, and you still look lovely today. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Is it was a delight to listen to all the stuff you do and to have you talk about what has been your passion, lifelong passion.
Cool.
For now?
Yeah.
Hi, dear Jaya. This is really
Hello.
moving.
It's not clear.
This was brilliant and deeply inspiring. We are all
God.
very proud of you. I also feel proud that you allowed me to do the India and Punjab maps. And thank you for that. Thank you for everything you've done for Dilli Haat, for the Akshara exhibition, for the Kerala prostitute village, your maps, the Kashmir stones, for impacting craftspeople's lives in such a big way. You have compressed many lifetimes' work in one day, and we are proud of you.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, Jayaji, you had done one project with, yes, you had done one project with the National Book Trust, where you had invited
Yes.
various artists from different states, and we had provided stories and they had illustrated. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, in fact, I'm sorry I couldn't show those with the children's stories because I don't seem to have any copies of those.
Yeah.
But it was our first project which I felt very proud of because it was the first time traditional artists were actually illustrating books. And you provided stories which were international stories.
Yes.
And we had some nice sessions together. So I really enjoyed that, and I'm so glad you're on this program and we're sharing it together.
Yes, because we were also very much excited to have them in our building and sitting in our hall and doing those wonderful works. Thanks to you that we could have this kind of a project which was so innovative. Thank you very much.
Needed you there.
Jayaji?
I can see Lekha there. Hi, Lekha.
Hi, Jaya.
Lekha, do you have any
Always very
questions?
loyal to the program.
But I just absolutely love what you do and how you engage with the crafts people, and then they feel ki Didi aayi hai, or please. I just cannot. I will never forget how you were able to. One day in Bhopal, I wonder if you remember, there was some exhibition of the British Council, and there were some people had come and said, "Oh, yahan par Ram ji ka kuch apman ho raha hai," and you went fearlessly to them and you said, "I'm a Hindu, and and I'm not as kamzor to be let some artist ki kalpana which can possibly degrade my Hinduism. That is his kalpana." And I remember that word kalpana, because that's what it is. It's an artist's kalpana of something. It's not to make any statement, a political statement. Yes. So I cannot forget that. But I just love what you do. So thank you for being there for all of us, for us to live vicariously through your life in a way.
Thank you.
Well, you are all needed there to see and appreciate and love what craftspeople do. And that's as I said in the beginning, my life has been a luxury because I can actually do all the things I love to do. So it's good for me.
But all power to you, Jaya. Thank you.
There's a question, Jayaji, by Bidisha Roydas.
Thank you.
There's a question from Bidisha Roydas. What's your view on digital technology after crafting?
Depends how it's used. I don't like the e-commerce overriding everything because, of course, that's the digital answer to marketing during COVID. But it takes the humanity and the life out of a product. The product is much, much more than just a thing to use or put on a shelf. It's a human life, a human story. And that can only happen when you engage with them face to face. And when it's handwork that comes from the heart and the mind, then you also have to have the human interaction with it. And the whole aura and the ethos and the culture and the business of our traditional bazaars is something that should never be lost, because I think that's where real humanity engages with each other. And as somebody wrote somewhere very beautifully, that art and craft rub away the rough edges of life. And I don't think the digital answer is good for that.
Yeah.
Ask themselves, ask craftspeople, and in some way in everyone's life, they should engage with craft, because it's much more than just an object or a textile or a painting on the wall. It's a human being and a whole history and a culture and a Sanskriti parampara behind it. And I think that's what we all have to keep alive.
Thank you, Jayaji. Thank you for being with us. And I realize that you had network issues, and I'm so glad that we could do the recording before. And I think because you suspected that there could be a network problem, but lovely of you to have us, on this journey with you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. And I hope everyone joins in again on a second Saturday of every month for the Meet the Artist of JD Center of Art. Thank you and goodbye.
Siddharth sir, one request.
Yes.